Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for making some time for this online public meeting this afternoon, whether you're watching it live as we go out on Thursday afternoon, or whether you're watching it on catch up via YouTube or one of the other channels. Welcome to the meeting. The previous meetings are all available to watch online. So there are no recorded minutes of these meetings, but there are all the recordings are available, as are the slide presentations from all the previous meetings are available to review if anyone would like to. I'm Jo Coles. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Policing, Fire and Crime for York and North Yorkshire. So I will be chairing the meeting this afternoon. Also on the call, we have the Chief Fire Officer, Jonathan Dyson, who will jump in on any technical issues or particular points that he would like to raise. We also have Area Manager Damien Henderson, who will lead us through the performance pack, which is available online, but will also be taking people through the slides here. And we also have Andy Dorr and James Manning from the Fire and Rescue Service, who are going to lead on our thematic sections this afternoon, which will be focused on the areas around the recommendations following the Grenfell Tower and what the York and North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service have been doing to ensure that we are implementing those recommendations. Also on the call, just so that people are aware, are people from my office within the Policing, Fire and Crime Directorate of the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. So Tamara Stevens, who is the director of that directorate, and also Amanda Wilkinson and Mark Ayres, who lead different elements of those teams as well. And then the two other people on the call are our brilliant policy support, Rebecca Smith, who hasn't got her camera on, and Amanda Bowes from the communications team, both of whom are making sure that this meeting happens in the way that it needs to happen. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Damien, if you'd like to share your first slide pack, and we can have a look at the performance information. I think the thing to note about this performance pack, which we didn't have for the last meeting back in, I think it must have been September, was that this period that we're looking at looks and covers the Langdale incident on the North Yorkshire moors. So just anything, Damien, that you can add in terms of context while we're going through those slides that might explain things that might have been related to the Langdale incident in terms of that performance data would be extremely helpful, and will avoid me asking that because I'm going to ask it anyway. So you may as well just factor it into the updates that you're giving us. But the floor is yours, Damien. You can crack on.
Certainly. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just checking you can see my slides okay and you can hear me clearly.
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Lovely. So as you've stated, this is quarter two's performance. So from the 1st of July to the 30th of September, it takes the normal format that we have seen. So with regards to home fire safety visits, within this period, we completed 1,424. That is slightly down on quarter one from this reporting period, where we undertook 1,546. But as you've stated, this covered the considerable impact of the Fylingdales Moor incident. Really pleasing figures, as you can see there on the right-hand side. Whole time crews completed 1,101 home fire safety visits, which is a significant increase on the reporting period last year. Having a look at that and trying to assess the impact of the major incident, actually in July, operational crews and the teams undertook 493 home fire safety visits. This was significantly impacted in August, as I think we would all expect, and 256 home fire safety visits were done in August. What I will say with regards to that, really proud of the activity that our operational crews and specialists did, even during the period of the major incident. We did work with crews extensively when we're developing our key performance indicators to ensure that they are achievable. During the period of Langdale, we took appropriate action to prioritise our home fire safety visits alongside operational training. The reason we did this, many of our home fire safety visits come from referrals from partners, and as you are aware, a large proportion of those are either high or very high risk vulnerable people. So we prioritised home fire safety visits alongside operational training. Some areas that we report on with regards to SSRIs and gathering risk information for buildings, we have seen a drop off in those over the period. Obviously, with those, they can take a considerable amount of time, upwards of 3 hours if it is a large building like one of our hospitals. That takes some significant planning. So we have prioritised home fire safety visits during the period alongside operational training, and crews have managed to maintain reasonable performance even with that drop off in August, which would be expected. Given that this is Q2, I did have a look to see how, as an organisation, we've sort of bounced back from the major incident. In October, we did 477 home fire safety visits, which is very similar to what we did in July, and aligns with what we've done in other months throughout this financial year. I'll pause there, Deputy Mayor, and see if there's any questions on this one.
Yeah, thanks. I think the thing that struck me really was the fact that it struck me as being still an extremely high level of performance, which is great. My question, I suppose, is how did you ensure that you were balancing staff well-being, given the amount of active firefighting a lot of crews would have been doing during August in particular, but also into September? And how did you kind of balance those kind of wider public safety needs, including those home fire safety visits, which I appreciate are really important, alongside staff well-being and the well-being of our firefighters during what would have been an extremely busy time for them?
Yes, certainly, and it's a really good question, Deputy Mayor. So, as I stated, we agreed the key performance indicators at the start of the year. We wanted to ensure that we included staff in that, certainly so they felt motivated and they felt that any of our key performance indicators were both achievable and realistic. With regards to the 1,100 home fire safety visits that crew have done, they will be predominantly done by our whole time and day crewed staff. We have 11 stations, so approximately over that 3-month period, each station on average will have done 100 home fire safety visits, which equates to just slightly over one per day, sorry. That will obviously be a combination of the duty systems and the watches at that. Like I've said, there has been somewhat of a decline in certain other areas like site-specific risk information, and we will prioritise that moving forward. But we realised crews were working incredibly hard on Langdale. Home fire safety visits, we hold on to a significant risk if a partner agency has referred a high or very high risk individual. The longer that we hold on to that risk without making contact. So we prioritise that. We certainly, at the last service delivery performance meeting, which I chaired, there was huge thanks to crews. There was an understanding that we appreciate that some activity like SSRIs and other areas, watch performance.
Sorry, you need to not talk in acronyms. What's an SSRI?
Sorry, I thought I'd covered that previously, so I didn't go into. That's a risk visit to a building such as a hospital. So where we're
Okay.
having that risk information. So we appreciate they can take a considerable amount of time. They're difficult to plan in with the building owners and the responsible owners. So we appreciate that some of that activity has declined over this period to allow our staff to get suitable rest periods. But certainly those home fire safety visits, we're extremely proud of crews in ensuring that we don't maintain that risk as a service. But certainly that one per station per day, is achievable. I'm sure when they weren't at Langdale, they did far more than one in a day. And we did see that drop off of virtually 50% in September, which would be expected because that is, in August, that was
Yeah.
major drop off, and that was at the height of Langdale, which is totally appropriate given the scale of the incident at that time.
Exactly. That was what struck me really, was that you can't really tell across a whole quarter, which is why I guess it's useful to have you talking through what effectively happened month by month, because I would have expected quite a big drop off in this quarter because firefighters were kind of actively at Langdale for most of that month. I guess my only question before we move on is really just whether or not there was any feedback from staff about this performance, and whether or not that was actually, it was manageable to be able to maintain this level of performance whilst also doing the level of kind of active firefighting engagement that they were doing, most crews were doing anyway during August in particular.
Certainly from my point, Deputy Mayor, I've had feedback from district commanders. So during the service delivery performance meeting, each of the district commanders across the 4 districts provide an update. It was them that have explained how they've prioritised activity, how they have shared that understanding that we appreciate that some areas will decline, but being really clear on the importance of these prevention activity. So I haven't had significant direct feedback from crews, but from district commanders, I think they appreciated the fact that there wasn't, undue stress being put on from an organisational perspective, and they were allowed to flex their activity away from the major incident to meet those key priorities.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we can move on.
This is just a visual representation, so I will scan over that one.
Well, actually, sorry, if you could just.
Oh, sorry.
Would be no, sorry. What would be helpful would be, I think you have got that month by month data on there now, have you? In terms of the home fire safety visit,
Yes.
So I can see it month by month. One's last year and one's this year, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
What would be helpful would be to understand, again, similarly, the breakdown, given that you've obviously got the data month by month, if there's a way of just presenting that so that we can see it more clearly by the categories as well as just in the chart.
Yep, certainly I can feed that back in, Deputy Mayor, and make sure that we do that so we can see the month by month, because as you've seen previously, as we've run through these reports, there are certain periods where we do more activity during a 12-month period than others. We've talked other times about that Christmas period where it's a challenge to get into people's homes as they're celebrating the festive period. So we will see that. So certainly I can ask the team that developed these slides to try and get that month by month breakdown. I think what is really clear this year is by us working with crews, with our staff to set those realistic targets. Again, as we did last year, we're seeing that year-on-year improvement with actual figures that are being delivered.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Other activity for prevention. So as you can see, a number of safeguarding referrals that were made, school education talks, and a number of events attended. This slide would normally be predominantly from our specialist prevention teams. So that's why this has been less impacted than the actual home fire safety visits, where a large proportion of those are delivered by our operational crews.
So some of these slides have got information. So the referrals from partners has got a number from the same quarter last year. I just wondered, maybe it's not possible to get the data for all of them, but school education talks, for example, it would be useful to know what the equivalent, what I'm comparing them to, I guess, rather than just an absolute number. If that's something you can either talk me through, or just talk me through where the referrals are coming through from.
Yeah, certainly. I will get that information for you, Deputy Mayor. We do provide that at times, obviously, as you're aware, but for the members of the public, or on an annual basis, we report our productivity and efficiency plan in line with government requirements for both productivity and efficiency. Within those plans, we do a breakdown of the activity, where that compares. So fire bike deployments, how many we've done this year compared to previous years, how that equates to hours. I suppose I'm saying that to you to say, yes, we can get that for you, and I can ask the teams to include that on the slide for next time.
Thank you very much. And then just on the school education talks again, I'm just kind of aware that there have been a whole spate of arson issues, particularly in York, over probably the last 3 or 4 months. So that wouldn't necessarily be covered properly by this reporting period, but whether or not those school education talks, how the kind of decisions are made about where those are targeted.
I'll bring Tom Hurst in on that question.
Oh,
please.
Tom, you weren't on before. Hello, welcome to the meeting.
Afternoon, everyone. Afternoon, Deputy Mayor. So for this one, 2 things. So the school education talks. We use and we support, and we actually provide packages with a organisation called Staywise. So we're making sure that that's we've got national packages for specific risks. That's for road, water, and for fire safety around that. And what we can do is we provide educational packages to be delivered by schools by themselves, and then where we find specifics, we can then deliver the packages on behalf of that school. So what we'll try and do around that, Deputy Mayor, is we will sort of give those key packages that we try to deliver for Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, around specific risk areas, and what we're providing for future slides, if that would be of benefit. In relation to the localised increases in antisocial behaviour fires, we have been working around that with the local community safety partnership, and some of that work has been going into schools and delivering that information. And also on the back of that, some of our fire safe referrals have increased as well. So the fire safe referrals, there are for youths that have a interest in fire, let's just say, and we can deliver packages around that to provide reduction around that sort of interest, and also help and support and try and make them safer, including things like a home fire safety visit for the family members or the care provider that they live with as well. So there's been an increase around that. There's been an increase in localised activity and on-foot engagement, and we have been interacting with the local schools as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. And the thing that I think I was keen to understand is often, you know, the fire and rescue services is a very trusted organisation, particularly to young people, and therefore how do we just make sure that we're optimising those opportunities to engage with young people who may be on the fringes of criminal activity that the police will be involved with as well, in order to kind of see that off before it gets too serious. Again, it might be one for us to consider for a thematic further down the line, but I'm really keen to understand how the blue lights between you and yourselves and police are operating, particularly in that prevention space. But I'm happy to pick that up at another meeting.
Yeah, just finally on that, yeah, we're just about to relaunch one of our youth activities about the building resilience program, developing resilience program. So with that, that is where we use our skill sets and our healthy role modelling to be able to deliver an educational package, working in conjunction with the schools and the school liaison officer from NYP to make sure that we deliver that package to the people, like you said, that could real benefit from that level of support and that educational piece. And yeah, we've modelled that. It's based around a national model through the NFCC that we're just about to launch. So we just paused on ours to reflect on it, and we're just about to relaunch that with the first one going live in the next month or two. So a thematic might be good around our youth activities.
Great. And it's not on there, but presumably there are some prevention activities around road safety that would also be covered on this in this area as well, particularly in those summer months when I know the fire bike in particular is really active.
Yeah, the fire bike hours aren't featured on this itself, but the events attended, the 38 events attended, some of them do incorporate the road safety.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you. Sorry, Damien, carry on.
Thank you. So the next slide is our protection slide. As you can see from this, so statutory and non-statutory consultations and regulatory activity is less than the previous financial year. This is to be expected. We don't see this as an impact of the Fylingdales Moor incidents. 99% of all fire safety activity is done by our specific and expert business fire safety officers. What we have done when we've established our risk-based intervention programme is we've got much more of a focus in ensuring that we get into our high and very high risk buildings. So we were expecting a reduction in regulatory activity. Guidance and advisory is very similar to the same reporting period last year, and probably as you remember over the last 2 or 3 of these updates, we did actually have a significant increase in guidance and advisory. That was due to changes in legislation around tourism, but that seems now to have levelled out somewhat. And this year we have seen an increase in automatic fire alarms and unwanted fire signals. That's the engagement following them rather than an increase in actual unwanted fire signals. So given the proposals within our CRMP, when we do get an unwanted fire signal, our business fire safety officers are working with responsible owners to advise, educate and support them to reduce those where possible. So it is showing that we've got an increase in engagement around that area.
Great, thanks. Just one question about the regulatory activity, which is, I think, down actually 40%, not 20%. Just wondered what else was included in that 20% figure that's on the slide.
I
think is it that first bullet point?
Yes, I'm just looking at that one. Sorry, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so that reduction is because we now have a number of high and very high risk premises that we've committed to inspecting over a 3-year period. That will be less, but it's ensuring that we get into the right properties at the right time to ensure wherever there is that sleeping risk, that we're going in and doing that. So certainly from our point of view, this isn't about achieving high levels of numbers. This is about ensuring that we're compliant with our risk-based intervention programme, and then we're in line to achieve all of those buildings within that rolling 3-year period.
And just one question, the business fire safety officers who do 99% of all the fire safety jobs, would they also be people who would be involved in fire response? So would have also been involved in some of the Langdale Moor response, or are they employed slightly differently?
So within the business fire safety team, and I'll come to Tom afterwards, who leads with James in those areas, but we do have operational staff members within those roles, but we also have people who are support staff that also work as business fire safety officers. Obviously, if you are in an operational role as a watch manager, station manager, but fall within business fire safety, there is a commitment that you will maintain your operational competence, and they may have been called upon to support the incident at Langdale Moor.
Great. No, that's fantastic. Thank you. We can move on to the next one. Can I just say thank you so much for putting the page numbers on these slides. You've completely transformed my life.
Sorry, we lost the Deputy Mayor. It went into the
I was just thanking you for putting the page numbers on the slides, because it's made my life infinitely easier to navigate these slide packs. So thank you for that. I should have said at the start.
Yep, so overall fire engine availability. So for the reporting period, we were at 66% overall average fire engine availability. Obviously, that covers both our whole-time duty system and our on-call duty system. Whole-time duty system over the same period is at 96% availability. Within our on-call staff, that is at 54% availability. We're working, as I know you're aware, we're prioritising trying to improve that on-call availability wherever possible. It is a significant issue across the fire and rescue sector, but we're trying to ensure that we can increase that availability wherever possible, and ensure that we're recruiting individuals into the organisation. Certainly the high profile nature of Langdale has offered some opportunity, because I know in a couple of our station locations quite close to where that incident was, we've had a high number of new applicants that are wanting to join North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue, and we will work extremely hard to try and get each and every one of those into the fire and rescue service to try and improve on that 54% availability.
Great. So a couple of things on that slide. The first one is probably a more general thing, which is it would be really helpful to have a bit more information in this area. I know it is something that the public look at quite closely, and it is something that I think is important in terms of public confidence. So whether there's a way of providing some more information about this availability, and maybe where you are focusing your recruitment activity, for example, or where we might need to look at capital programs to improve the availability for people to perhaps work from fire stations. I just anything more that you can provide in this in terms of data on this slide, but also just in terms of the insights about what we're trying to do about it, I think would be helpful. But if you could just talk us through particularly the point you were making at the end about the on-call availability, anything you can add around, you've talked a little bit about the impact of Langdale in terms of people coming forward, but anything else that you can say about programs to improve the places and the availability of people and the ability of people to work from our fire stations so that they're then available to be on call?
Yeah, certainly, and it's a good point that you raised, Deputy Mayor. So similarly to how we present the prevention information with regards to the safeguarding referrals, what I will ask the team to do for the next online public meeting is how we're developing our recruitment, retention activity, what areas we are looking at. Within our CRMP, which is due to be published very soon, we have committed to making the currently temporary station manager role in on-call permanent. Lots of activities going into hopefully maintaining and increasing our availability. That is with regards to trying to streamline the process wherever possible to get people into our organisation, supporting them with have a go days, increasing the technology and improving the technology that they have available to them. We certainly look at recognition, both for our staff, but also the employers that offer their staff to North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue and let them respond to incidents in their time. So there's lots of activity we're doing to try and increase that availability. I think for the next slide, I will do something very similar to what was on that prevention slide, where you get a snapshot of what we're doing with regards to recruitment, retention, recognition, looking at technology, looking across our estates to actually be able to support them. You know, certain other areas which certainly Tom has led on is giving them the availability of a vehicle. So if they're wanting to do prevention activity, that's available for them. So there's a huge amount of work going on there. I'll get another slide into this so we can cover that in a similar way to the prevention.
Brilliant, thank you. And I just wanted to pick up on that final bullet point about the 18 recruits on the course that started in September, just to show the kind of their commitment to the service and to welcome them onto the course, because that's brilliant to see. And I know that David Skaith, the Mayor, and I are really keen to do anything else that we can, and we're open, we're all ears. So if you've got suggestions about anything we can do with employers, or again in terms of the buildings to ensure that we're making the North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service the best possible place to work. So just wanted to kind of stress that those 18 are fantastic to see those coming through, but we just need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make this the best fire and rescue service to work for. I think, Jonathan, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. One of the things that we're driving through is reform of our sickness policies, procedures, and also how we support firefighters both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. What we do see are trends coming through for sickness. Now, in August, we did have an increase in short-term sickness. As you're aware, over 50% of our workforce is on-call colleagues. Now, our on-call colleagues, the main reason that we're seeing coming through from them are predominantly musculoskeletal injuries, so muscle and various other injuries from those. But predominantly, these are obtained very low rates in service. These are obtained outside of the fire and rescue service or in their primary employment. And of course, when they receive time off from by a doctor in their primary employment, that then impacts on our on-call availability. And we have limited ability then to understand that sometimes because it's their primary employment that's undertaken. So we are pushing through with that. We've done reform, new policies, and again, worked with the trade unions on this. And then some of this is the processes in place. What we need to understand further is, are primary employers or, again, NHS pushing people back into occupational health for fire, because we have a very good offer? And again, what can we do and work with primary employers to understand better what services they're offering their staff, because it has an impact on us as well. And that's another place that we're looking, as Damien said there, in our on-call work and how we engage with employers. Thank you.
Great, thank you ever so much. Does anyone else have anything else on that slide? It would be great, yes, if we could, going forward, just have a little bit more information on that slide, because I know it is one of the slides that the public are interested in, and so therefore the more transparent we can be with that, the better. Thank you. Right, slide 7, Damien.
Yep, certainly, and this relates to our response standards, and this is where we have seen an impact from the Fylingdales Moor incident. So as you can see there, we are within the incident response standard for all incidents at 12 minutes 51. But over the quarter, we have gone over our dwelling fire response standard of 11 minutes, where on average we've been attending incidents at 11 minutes 34. Similar to prevention activity, I've looked across the breakdown of that. In July, we were slightly under the 11 minutes dwelling fire response standard. In September, we were slightly over, and it was very slightly over, but there was a significant impact in August. With regards to dwelling fires, we do have a relatively, thankfully, relatively low number of dwelling fires. In North Yorkshire and the City of York, it was fewer than 50 dwelling fires over that 3-month period. So any one incident that takes significant travel time can increase that response standard quite significantly. When I've looked at the data across all of those incidents, there were some incidents that weren't impacted by the major incident. They were in areas of extreme rurality where it would have still taken us that long, even if it wasn't the incident ongoing. But there was a number of incidents when the Langdale incident was at its high that were in areas where we would have expected a much quicker response, but the local fire engine was actually supporting the work at Langdale. So that has sort of impacted on that increase. Just to give you some assurance, Deputy Mayor, I've looked at October and November today just to see again, has that level to what we'd reasonably expect to see prior to the incident. And for October and November today, overall incident response is showing at 11 minutes 50 and dwelling fires at 10 minutes 23. We certainly think of the full financial year, we will have achieved the 11 minutes, but certainly when we do go over it for any quarter, we ensure that we look through all of those incidents. Just as a final bit of assurance, obviously during that time, dwelling fires can come in that are significantly different. Some of them may be small electrical fires, some of them are out on arrival that we proceed to check. During that period, we have had no fire fatalities or serious injuries relating to dwelling fires. But obviously, we look across all of those incidents to see if there is anything that we can learn and improve in the future.
Thank you, Damien. And I think my only request would have been to again have a bit more detail on this slide in order that rather than just the narrative which you have very helpfully just talked us through, that actually some of that information is also available in the slide packs for people who would need to access it that way. So I don't know whether that is something that we can provide separately. I certainly think it would be helpful to have it going forward. My question, I suppose, is beyond the kind of request for having more detail around this response standard. I think most people would understand that there was an impact on the response standard because of the major incident. I think it would be helpful to understand what the role of the resilience response that we had during that period was, because I know that right from the beginning we had regional support from other fire and rescue services during the Langdale incident, but notwithstanding that, it was still impacting on our wider response standard, and I assume that some of that is geographical, but it would just be helpful if you could just talk us through in a little bit more detail what that resilience was that we had during Langdale that was mitigating against that impact on the response standard, just to reassure the public.
Yes, certainly, and there's a number of areas where it has mitigated that response standard being significantly higher than it actually was. And like I've said with the breakdown, it was that month of September that took it over. Certainly from our point of view, we invoked support from National Resilience to the incident. That was primarily to support our crews, give our crews some respite, because they had been at the incident for a significant amount of time. But what we do have, our investment in technology, certainly even at its height, where we didn't have national resilience support for the incident, our investment in technology and our dynamic cover tool, which shows a map of the county, and I know you're aware of this, Deputy Mayor, but for the public, it shows a map of the county, it shows all of our fire engines, and it uses 5 years of that historical data to be able to predict where those areas of most risk are. That does come into its own when you do have a large incident like this, and you may only have a smaller than normal number of appliances available. That allows our incredible staff in control to look across the service area, position those fire engines so that they provide the best geographic cover relating to response times and risk that they can possibly do. Previously, prior to this, that will have been done by a sense of judgment and experience, where now we've got a clear picture that if I move this fire engine from that location to that location, does it have a positive impact on our response standard? And I think that has limited the dwelling fire response and the overall incident response, which has been maintained under our standard, from being significantly higher during this period.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, that is helpful. And I think I think the other thing is that when people know that they have a fire station near to them and they sometimes think that the fire engine isn't there, sometimes that will mean that that fire engine is out at an incident, but it may also mean that it is out optimizing the cover across that patch of the region. That's my understanding, but I don't know whether you can just clarify, just if people are thinking about their own local fire station, what it means if the fire engine isn't actually there.
Yep, certainly, and you were really accurate in that assessment. Certainly across the geographic scale, which it says on the slide, 3,200 square miles, the largest county in England. At times we have those local response, but it is a holistic service approach to delivering the best response standards across the whole of the county. And at times we may need to move those response to maximise those response times to any incidents that may come. So yeah, if you drive past a fire engine, it may be that they're at an incident within that local area, or then maximising our service response across the entire county.
Thanks. And the only other thing that I again struck me from that slide was we don't and you mentioned it, I think, when you were talking about the dwelling fire standard, was just the actually understanding the numbers of incidents in these categories, because actually the overall incident number will be pretty high, I would imagine. Certainly I look at the incident logs that are posted on your website relatively regularly, but I assume the dwelling fire number is relatively low overall, which I think you mentioned in your remarks. But if it was possible to again include that information, particularly around dwelling fires, which would be probably the #1 concern for the public.
Yep, certainly we can look across that, and yes, thankfully, dwelling fire incidents are quite low. You know, during that 3-month period, there were less than sort of 15 incidents per month, and they can range obviously in scale with regards to that, but we do quality assure each of the incidents to make sure that they're accurate, but certainly we can include that number for dwelling fires if that is of interest to the public.
I think that would be really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Thank you. This one finally is with regards to our incidents. There has been a rise, as we've seen. This isn't certainly just down to the second quarter. We saw a rise in fire incidents in the first quarter as well. I know when Area Manager Ilsley presented the thematic around the major incident, he talked about that long, hot, dry spring and summer, which has led to an increase in fire-related incidents. False alarms and our special service, which includes rescues, be that from vehicle collisions, rescues from high, other types of incidents where we support other agencies, they've remained quite constant. The biggest increases in those fires and predominantly around those small fires in the open, which were due to those sort of long, hot, dry periods we saw in spring and summer.
And can I just ask what the service is doing in terms of prevention around those small fires in the open, which some of which may have been started deliberately, some may have been started deliberately but put out or thought to be put out. What is your sense of what our prevention activity is, given that this is probably a growing risk for us, given our geography and the range of huge extent of countryside that we've got across the region?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'll bring Tom in on that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hiya. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we discussed it now in the thematic last time at the thematic before around the when we spoke about wildfire, pre-wildfire, of some of the activities we do. It's probably like best described as a triangular approach. So we do a wider spread, making sure we reach out through media, social medias around the risks around wildfires, be careful about fires in the open, preventative measures, working with some of the main landowners around that too, to make sure we've got that broad sort of breadth of information around it. And then from that, we look at more patterns and trends around that, where we are actually seeing localised incidents. We can do more tailored and bespoke packages, which could tailor right down to individual needs of local areas, schools, even identified individuals where we can help and support with that reduction.
Thank you. Sorry, this is probably Damien again, but the large vehicle fire increase, is there anything you can say around that and what lies behind that?
Yeah, certainly we did have a discussion around this, and we looked into this. This wasn't related to Langdale, so it wasn't agricultural vehicles that were supporting us in the major incident. Again, this is down to that hot, dry, long periods of that significant weather that has led to fires in those farming communities when they're overheating due to the environment, but also the activity that they're doing.
Oh, okay, that's what that means. That's useful to know. And just false alarms, which have decreased, I think, compared to the year before, but they have increased compared to the previous quarter. Is that normal? Would you expect more false alarms over the summer?
It's a very good question. I haven't looked into that one, Deputy Mayor, to see if we get...
Oh, it's good to give me one that you haven't already worked out.
Yeah, no, I haven't looked at that. It is and I'll be honest, when you look across the same period as last year, it's very similar. Hopefully Tom has looked at it and we'll have a credible response, because I haven't got one on that. Apologies.
Don't worry, thank you. Thanks, Tom. Do you want to come in?
Yeah.
Oh.
And see an increase in it due to multiple factors. some of it being down to actually dust and like insects, things like that, into the detection systems and things like that you tend to see a spike of during the. You also get elements of people bringing in smaller fires in summer from gardens and things like that, treating them as a fire, not realising it's a controlled fire being under there. So there's multiple aspects of it, but certainly around the detection systems, you do tend to see an increase in the summer periods.
Okay, that's good to know. Brilliant. Okay, I think we can carry on. Damien, is that the end of your?
That was the end, Deputy Mayor. You managed to catch me out right at the end.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't know whether it was just me for whom Tom Hurst's mic was glitching slightly, but hopefully it was just me. But I got the gist of what you were saying about the dust, so I think we're fine. Jonathan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, sorry, Deputy Mayor. I'm just thinking that there's been you've requested a lot of changes there to the current pack that we submit. Has that been captured by your office so that we can pick it up?
I would assume so. They're very diligent.
I've captured it. I've got it.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you, Mark. Okay, brilliant. We can move on to the next section, which is a presentation outlining the implementation of the Grenfell inquiry recommendations, including how those measures have enhanced community and firefighter safety and the local remediation plans, and what the service is doing to deliver that, what is working well and what is a challenge. I mean, I think just before I bring James and Andy in on this presentation, this was as everyone will know, a completely devastating incident and loss of life at Grenfell, and the London Fire Brigade, you know, had an enormous response to it, and are probably the best resourced fire and rescue service in the country, and still were overwhelmed by that incident. So I think it is obviously really important that we capture all the lessons to be learned from it, bearing in mind that we are an infinitely smaller fire and rescue service dealing with very different challenges to London Fire Brigade in terms of risk. Our risks are not non-existent, but they are very different to London-based risks because our population is much more dispersed and our geography is much bigger. But I just wanted to say that at the beginning before we started the slide presentation, because that was such a devastating incident. I will let James, Manny and Andy Dorr bring up their slide deck so that we can start the presentation. The floor is yours, guys, as soon as you're ready.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So my name is James Manning. I am the Head of Protection and Risk for the Service, otherwise known as Fire Safety. I'll be joined today by my colleague Andy Dorr, who's the Temporary Head of Training and Development, and we'll be taking you through this presentation. Again, just reiterating, it's the implementation of the Grenfell Inquiry recommendations and the local remediation plan update. So again, Deputy Mayor, thank you for the introduction. Just to echo some of the points there, that this tragedy claimed the lives of 72 people on that day back in June in 2017. And that just highlights the importance of the work that we are doing. And today, I would like to provide that assurance and confidence to both yourself, Deputy Mayor, and the public, that they are going to be safe and protected by the buildings that they live in. And also, if we do encounter a fire in these types of buildings, that we can respond appropriately.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have any questions on that first slide. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on then. So following the tragedy, Theresa May commissioned an inquiry. The outcome of that inquiry was split into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 of that report very much looked at the response and what happened on the night. And then phase 2 was much more about the systemic issues with regard to what failed in the building that day. And I think it's important that we recognise that the building didn't behave as it was expected, and primarily due to the external cladding on that building. And we'll touch more on that a bit later on, but it's important to really get to the focus of what happened on that night. The second phase of the report was considerable in size. It went through 7 volumes and contains 58 recommendations. 12 of those relate to the fire service sector as a whole, and 5 of those for all fire and rescue services. And I think it's important to touch on that. Obviously, many of those were specific to London Fire Brigade, but as part of that due diligence, we've obviously looked over what those elements were and provided that assurance ourselves.
Thank you. Just on that, I think it is important to recognise, and I not as much as the service, but have had separate briefings about the inquiry and the way in which it is important to ensure that we are learning those lessons, as I know the Fire and Rescue Service are doing, and that's why we're doing this thematic today. But could you just say something about what it means in a wider sense for a fire and rescue service such as ours? Because the public probably would assume that because we are not a big urban fire and rescue service with a lot of high-rise buildings, they might assume that there isn't as much that is relevant to us, whereas actually my takeaway from the briefings I've had is there is a great deal that is relevant. It just isn't maybe as obviously relevant because of the high-rise issues that obviously were at the forefront of people's minds at Grenfell.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think what's important to say is there is no different for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service how robust we have been around improving these and putting these recommendations in place. It doesn't matter if we've got a handful of buildings or thousands of buildings like some areas do. The same level of diligence has been put into the training, into changing our procedures, into the work that's been in our fire control and our communications, and everything that wraps around that. And we'll talk a bit more in detail about some of those elements shortly that Andy will go into. But absolutely, that we take it, extremely seriously, as we should, and have put a number of measures around this to ensure that we are absolutely prepared for any type of incident that occurs, including in these types of buildings, and taking all of that learning through into both improving what we've got now and into future planning and training.
Yeah, thank you. You can carry on.
Thank you. So just expanding really on what I've just said, both the sector nationally and locally, we've taken this extremely seriously, and this demonstrates it really that the National Fire Chiefs Council, otherwise known as the NFCC, has put in place a tracker to track the progress of fire and rescue services across the country. And obviously we are part of that, and we provide a return on a quarterly basis and an exception report. The last time we did that was on the 8th of October. And then we had 4 actions that were now at a completed status, 6 that are still in progress, and 1 that we haven't started yet. And I think it's really important to outline what that one is that we haven't started yet and why that is. What that relates to is firefighters being given discretion to take action in highly challenging circumstances when they've been on and go off brief. So an incident commander is obviously got a wider awareness of an incident and understands what's going on and with communication and everything else. So they brief their crews and their firefighters that go into these buildings with specific tasks and briefs. However, sometimes crews will go in and be faced with things that they weren't expecting. This talks about giving crews that autonomy to make some of those decisions. We already build some of that into our training. So we are confident that at the moment we're getting that right, but we're actively monitoring the national picture to see if that aligns to what we currently do. And if not, then obviously we will reflect that. But we feel that we are, if anything, ahead of the game on that one with what we have in place, or we're comfortable anyway. But of course, we're going to watch the progress on that. And we're waiting on the NFCC, National Fire Chiefs Council, to issue some guidance. And of course, we will align to whatever that is.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, there's one point from our recent inspection report, which I don't know who the best person is to come back on it, but it relates to this relates to this slide, that I think we were told in HMI that the service needs to provide operational training in high-rise buildings to ensure that we can command that kind of incident effectively. I just wondered how we would actually monitor progress against that HMI in the context of this of the recommendations from Grenfell.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Great, thank you.
As that, Deputy Mayor, thank you. So yeah, this one very much was about, as we'll see later on, we have quite a small number of large high-rise residential buildings in our area, or high-rise buildings, otherwise known. And they are in areas where they've been very, very well maintained in many cases, or in most cases. They're not in areas of deprivation where you quite often see these buildings haven't been maintained or due to be knocked down. That leaves it quite difficult for to take it to the full extent of training. If you like, we can go in, we can visit these buildings, we can become familiar with them, but obviously we can't damage these buildings. So what we've now done, and we've recognised that, and obviously HMI have recognised that, and in response, we've worked with our neighbours in West Yorkshire and surrounding services to identify building stock that might be suitable for doing that, and we've been proactive in that space and already completed a lot of that training that we'll continue to do, and ensure that our firefighters are getting that training, even though we don't naturally have the building stock available that we would obviously want to cause any damage to. And like I say, I want to reiterate that that's not just going over the border to cause damage to somebody else's buildings. This is because they are due for demolition, and they lend themselves ideally for this type of training.
Great, thank you. Just one other thing from me on that. Just one of the issues that I am aware of from the briefings that I've had separately around Grenfell was around lines of command and communication. Is that something you're going to cover elsewhere in the presentation, or is that something that fits under this governance slide?
No, it's very much going to be covered quite robustly in the following slides that Andy's going to present.
In which case, carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, just to talk about how we're governing that internally within the service, we've got a dedicated meeting, which we call the Tall Buildings Group, where these actions are monitored through, and that feeds into our Operational Effectiveness Board. And anything from that that we need to escalate can be directly go up to Senior Leadership Board. And then finally, to wrap around all of that, our Independent Audit Committee chose this to look at and commission our independent auditors to look into this area and scrutinise everything that we've done around it, because it is so important. And what I can say is that we received a really good outcome with that of substantial assurance. Now, substantial assurance is the maximum that we could have received back. These are a professional organisation that do this for a living, and naturally that we take great confidence based on that result, and I would hope that the public would as well.
Yeah, I think you are doing extremely well to have reached this stage of being able to update me and the public in this way, given where I know a lot of fire and rescue services are, not least because the level of buildings that they need to be able to monitor effectively. I think the fire chief would like to come in.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I think it's relevant to note that this is also under national scrutiny and assurance. There are ministerial advisory groups where chiefs are then into the National Fire Chiefs Council have to report our progress on an individual and then a national basis into central government. So I think it is absolutely, and we are making real good headway in this, and that is right that is reported into central government as a result of this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just because we don't have a lot of high-rise buildings doesn't actually mean that this isn't quite challenging for our fire and rescue service. It's challenging in a very different way, but actually that doesn't mean it's not challenging. So I appreciate all of that, and I also appreciate the progress that has been made so quickly. So yeah, thank you, and we can, I think, move on to the next slide.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So at this point, this is where I'd like to hand over to Andy Dorr. And Andy, if you could take it from here, please.
Just before you start, Andy, if you can make sure you explain all your acronyms on that page, that would be great, because they are not terribly accessible to the public. So please talk us through them in full.
Yep, no problem, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, James. Okay, so I'm going to go through these next few slides with you that really in relation to the training elements that James has already mentioned from what was highlighted from the Grenfell Phase 2 report. As you'll see from here, some of those have been completed. There are still some that are in progress. As you say, it's taken us time to get through it, but we are making really good progress with this training. So the first one on there was around communications, and I think this maybe relates back to what you were just talking around the communication issues that you'd maybe been have maybe been discussed with you previously. But just in relation to that, we've got enhanced communication training now for all our firefighters. So all of our firefighters that come through training, they're trained in basically the confident in the use of all the available communication options on the incident ground that are available to them. So how they would respond if they were to lose communication within there. We go on then to talk about the incident commanders. So we ensure through our training at the minute, so through our revalidation process or through our annual updates, the incident commanders would know how to establish a communications plan at an incident and any actions to take should there be a widespread of communications. And then also with the introduction of, and I know you're aware of, with the introduction of telemetry now on our new breathing apparatus equipment, which is a huge step forward with regards to firefighter safety and also with regards to that communication. It allows active monitoring and the ability to request those firefighters to leave a risk area in the event that communications was to break down, but also for us outside of the incident to be able to identify what is actually going on from observations on a board. I'll pause that there because I do think that was I've probably covered some of the questions that you had around that. So just if there's anything else that you need me to go through regarding
Is that
communications.
just on the communications?
On the communications, yeah.
Yeah, my only question on communications was just, I suppose, our challenge around communications is probably as much about coverage and network as it is strategic communications, which is probably a bigger issue at Grenfell. I just wondered whether there was anything that has been covered in terms of network coverage, given our geography and the challenges of anything happening in a place where we might struggle to have good network or radio coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be covering it a little bit later on, but one of the things in relation to that was the communications between what was going on outside of the building at Grenfell and what was going on what we call the bridgehead. So actually relating to that fire floor effectively and the communication that happened there. So we've put things in place now with regards to regarding what we call our evacuation officer, where we've got effectively through a Teams communication that links us between outside of the building, the fire floor, and our control staff as well, which is a live link up for all of those in relation to that. When you talk about the communication problems as part of the training, the crews have been tasked to go to these particular high-rise residential buildings that is within their areas and to test their communication channels and to test these evacuation boards to make sure that where there are any issues, we're aware of them and we can do that. So that work has gone on. We've got that information back and we've identified at the moment that we don't particularly have any issues, black spots, etc. But that has all been considered, Deputy Mayor, throughout this training process.
Great, thank you. I suppose my worry wouldn't be so much radio coverage in an urban area. I'd be very worried about whether or not, if something had happened in the middle of Langdale, there was, or an equivalent place in the Dales or wherever it might be, that we had good enough radio coverage in all those places. But are you telling me that that's okay?
From what I'm aware of, unless anyone else needs to jump in there, but from what I'm aware of,
the Chief wants to come in.
Yeah,
brilliant. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, so Deputy Mayor, the airwave radio system, so the national system which all emergency services utilise, make provision for this. So as at Langdale, we did have some challenges there, and where the signal drops, it is consistently, second by second monitored, Airwave have their mobile systems which can be deployed onto sites to then maintain that communication across the entire area. So all of these things are continuously monitored. It's part of what we monitor through the incident command system, making sure that we've got comms not only with the teams on the ground, but also back into control. And that's a continuous.
Yeah, and for me, this is how you apply the learning from Grenfell to the whole range of scenarios that we are more likely probably to face in our region, but equally, you know, similar situations could equally happen here as well. So it's just making sure that we're applying all those issues to our own geography at the same time. Did you want to come back in?
Yes, that's just a very relevant point. As a result of Grenfell, one of the outcomes was a multi-agency interoperability, so that services can see or able to then pass fire calls from one service into another. North Yorkshire was the first fire and rescue service to go live with that technology. So we were at the pinnacle once again of everything that we're trying to deliver here. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. That's very helpful. Apologies, Andy, you can carry on.
That's okay. The chief has stolen my thunder on my next couple of bits on my slides, but there you go.
Happens.
So we'll thank you. So moving on, in relation to those points from a training point of view, so around water supplies, obviously that was a big issue on the night of Grenfell. So with regards to our training within the service, the firefighters again trained in the use of different types of hydrants as part of their training course, understanding of the water supplies. So again, part of their risk information visits will be to understand the water supplies that are near their tall buildings, where the hydrants are located, and then linking that in with the water protocols. And again, through our incident command training, the incident commands have got the knowledge and the understanding on their ability to request a water undertaker. So basically, through Yorkshire Water, to increase the supply and pressure of the water in a particular main, if that were to be an issue on the fire ground. So again, those elements are currently certainly the water protocols one is currently ongoing with our incident command trainers, but that is part of the schedule for the next for this next year for updates.
Brilliant, fantastic, thank you.
Looking at the risk information, we've mentioned that really, but it's the crews, as I say, they're going out, so they're high-rise residential risk buildings being identified through work. We task them to go out and have a look. So through their site-specific risk information, they gather all that information, and all that then has been put into the system so that we know if we were to get an incident at that particular building, we're aware of what the risks are, where we would find, as we spoke about, certain information around maybe the residents within there, maybe people who might be unable to evacuate, where the keys are for the lifts, all those elements all there. So that all comes under that risk information. The training currently within the control room, so currently in progress at the minute. One of the big things that came out of this from a control point of view is how they were left out of a lot of the things, particularly with regards to exercises. We now ensure that control are integrated with all our district exercises so that we're getting that understanding, that shared situational awareness and the communication between obviously the incident ground and them. So we're utilising that a lot more. We've done a lot of work with control with regards to the communication, and they've had the same information that the crews have had with regards to this tall buildings training. So they're aware of everything that's going on the fire ground with regards to evacuation and the comms procedures, etc. That we can communicate with our control room. On the back of that, they're currently looking at a new competency framework as well that will incorporate all this into their training so that they're getting this updated on an annual basis. It's not just something they're going to do once and then forget about it. It's work in progress for them to make sure they've got that within their competency framework, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
And then the final bit on there with regards to the in progress is around debriefing. So again, through organisational learning, we've now got processes in place through our Organisational Effectiveness Board, through the GESIP, so through the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Programme, and through the National Fire Chiefs Council, whereby we're just taking all our organisational learning and putting it through those governance channels where we bring that back, and then we can send that to the relevant areas, learning, response and resilience, etc., to ensure that we're updating our policies and procedures accordingly with regards to Grenfell.
Brilliant. Yeah, that all sounds great to me. We can carry on.
Thank you. So slide 6.
Yeah, who's doing this one?
Yeah, I'm still. James, are you still driving that for me for slide 6?
Yeah,
I can see it. Maybe
Thank
it's
you.
you.
moved on.
Yeah, it's slow for me. Thank you. Okay, so slide 6, progress then that we've delivered. So as we spoke about there, so the Chief mentioned the National Fire Control Announcement Talk Group. So as we say, that is now just to improve communication. So that is basically a talk group whereby for during major incidents, the emergency services can all talk to each other around that. So we've spoke about the Operation Willowbeck and the first national test. So Operation Willowbeck, if we're inundated or any fire rescue service control room is inundated with emergency calls, it's a process through where through BT they can re-divert those calls effectively to other quieter control rooms effectively to be able to do that. And as the Chief said, we were the first service to complete that first national test through Operational Willowbeck. We've introduced the teams-based evacuation board. So this is what I was talking about that real-time sharing of persons at risk information. So that's information whereby the calls, if they were to come through into our control room, they would put the details into this board. That information will then get passed through to the fire ground. So we would have an evacuation officer who can see that it's real-time information, and that gives us the information that we need. So if we've got a person in flat 6 who's unable to evacuate, we're aware of that on the fire ground from what's being passed through to control from that person in flat 6 telling us that, and we can then initiate a rescue from that fire ground up to our bridgehead and our fire sector commander, who would then initiate a rescue of those buildings. So that is a massive step and a big thing where we've now got that communication between the fire ground and that bridgehead element, Deputy Mayor.
And can I just ask, so I'm just aware that in most buildings that have got vulnerable people in them, so sheltered housing or older people accommodation, for example, they would have evacuation plans at the entrance to those buildings that the fire service would usually access if they needed to, if there was an incident in those buildings. I guess my question is, which of those takes precedent? So if you have that information that you've maybe picked up on the scene, but then maybe the control room gets a call as per your example from the person in flat 6, and maybe it's just an admin error that means that the information that the fire service has picked up at the entrance is not up to date, or they've got a visitor there, or some other reason why the information isn't correct. What's your way in which you triage that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, obviously that information will be updated on a regular basis. So through the assurance visits and what we spoke about with the crews that are going out, making sure that information is up to date. With regards to prioritising that, a lot would determine on around what was actually going on at the incident. So if they had for example, a stay put policy, which was what was going on at Grenfell at the time. So they had a stay put policy. Depending on what's going on, that individual in flat 6, it may be safe for them to stay there. That would only change once we get the information around, actually, we've changed now from that stay put policy to we need to get these people out. So it's at that point when we identify these people need to come out, that would then be prioritised, and that would happen from the calls between control, what was going on the evacuation board, the incident commander, and who was at fire sector to make that happen. So the priority would happen once we've identified what is the state of this building, because it may be the safest thing that they do stay in there. Yes, they're unable to evacuate, but they may not be impacted, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, and another scenario, sorry, I'm just aware of a couple of scenarios that I was keen to test in this space. So the other scenario would be a building with a stay put policy with a live incident where actually people in one part of a building may be very safe to stay put because they're not going to be remotely at risk, but there may be some other people in the same building who either feel very unsafe because of just their own, just how they feel, but also because of possibly their maybe nearer proximity to a live incident. How would you manage, again, people on the ground who are members of the public who might be upset or panicking or just unsure of what a stay put policy means once they know that you're on the ground?
Yeah, so we've tested this, we've looked at this, because ultimately you're going to get that. If you've got a stay put policy, ultimately people are going to be afraid and want to come out. And we've looked at that through the training. So when we talk about predetermined attendances, what we've done is we've increased that. This is actually on this slide to say, actually, we're going to send an appliance that is to support that evacuation officer, because ultimately what's going to happen is those people are going to start coming down the stairwells. We don't know where they've come from. So it's about being able to gather that information at that point, record it and put it onto these evacuation boards so that we're aware of who has come out of the building, even though it may be a stay put, they may have come out. So we've got good information as to who has and who hasn't come out of the building at that time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's these evacuation boards and it's understanding what those are. Are they, sorry to be, I hope it's not a stupid question, are they physical things or is it a digital system?
So it's both for the simple reason, as you said, whereby there may be a breakdown in that in that signal. So yes, they are. So if I were to go as a flex duty officer and to take over that role of evacuation, I would open my laptop and it's basically an Excel spreadsheet into a team site. That's how that works. But also within the crews who are on site, within their risk packs, we basically have that as a laminated sheet as well. So we could just use that and write that down. So the answer to the question is that they're both. We've covered both options.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Jonathan.
Deputy Mayor, just a point. So this is where we have to consider also our control staff. So where they are receiving calls and giving out fire survival guidance, they are able to populate that digital sheet. It's able to be replicated at incident. So both incident commander and control can both understand the same dynamic. That is hopefully obviously the mechanism where we assure the public and deliver the same outcome we need.
And also just means you've got one source of the truth, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Apologies. Did you want to carry on? Have you got more on that slide?
Yeah, just quickly, we've covered a few of those. So yeah, all the training that we've done, that's all been reviewed and aligned to national operational guidance in relation to what we've been talking about, the evacuation strategies, fire survival guidance, etc., through our control team. We've updated, as I've said, the mobilising system screens and that increased predetermined attendance as well. And as I said, we've conducted multiple high-rise residential risk-based exercises with our control staff as well. So we've done that with the control team as well. So they're aware of what's going on. If it were to be incident on the fire ground, what would be happening, and they can see what's going on to be able to replicate that within the control room. Important to say as well, they've completed a control staffing review recently, and that has increased the number of staffing levels within our control room as well to support the resources within there.
And that is as a direct result of the findings from this inquiry.
It was a part of that, yeah, because of the numbers. It was also just a review of the whole control staffing review as well.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you. So slide 7. Again, just really probably going over a few of the things here, but with regards to the progress that's been delivered. So we've updated through national operational guidance. We've now got a procedure in place for that and for our evacuation training. It's important to note that you mentioned before around North Yorkshire doesn't have a lot of high-rise premises. So all the crews within the areas that do, so Harrogate, York, Skipton, Scarborough, they've all had this initial input. And then the underlying areas around those as well. So the next closest stations to those have all had that. Everybody across the service has completed mandatory high-rise e-learning, so they've got the knowledge and understanding, and then the practical implications around that have been done through these closest stations, and that's going through 3 phases at the minute. So those initial stations, what we spoke about, then the next underlying ones, and then the wider implication around the rest of the service. But I'm sure you can understand just from a geographical point of view and the workload involved to do that. But we're confident that where we're at the minute is we've got all of these people within those high risk areas that are all trained in these high-rise procedures.
And I suppose that, sorry, just on that. So although you're right, we don't have large numbers of high-rise buildings, certainly not with people living in them. I suppose though, just as Langdale was a really important learning incident for urban fire and rescue services to come and deal with what was a very different incident for them, we never quite know when our fire and rescue service might be called upon, for example, to deal with a major residential incident in one of our neighbouring fire and rescue services. So actually that training is important for us, obviously, but it's also important for people to have those skills, because you actually never know when you might get called to other incidents.
Absolutely, and as James alluded to earlier, you know, we've done some work with cross border, so with West Yorkshire, mainly because they had a good venue where we could do that training. But yeah, we've done that, and I think through national operational guidance, a lot of these procedures are very similar. There are some things that are slightly different. That's just each service that may have a slightly different take on things, but actually to get to the incident, yes, we could operate cross border in these sort of things as well, because of the training, which is obviously making, you know, the firefighters and the public safer as well.
Yeah, carry on. I didn't know whether you finished.
No, sure. We've mentioned the lift key issue, so again that comes as part of the risk information. We've got, again, back to comms, dual digital analog radios on all appliances, and also the intrinsically safe radios. So they're not on all appliances, they're strategically placed across the county on our heavy rescue units. So if we need to use those, we'd call those appropriately for that. The pre-plans we've mentioned for that with regards to the crews, and then these high-rise rescue packs that are on all those key appliances. So that's particularly now around new equipment that crews will be taking in to deal with these type of incidents. So those appliances that I mentioned earlier, they will go to that incident and they will be going into the building with these high-rise packs. Can
you just give me a sense of what's in one of those packs?
Yep. Absolutely. So it's obviously this is around the speed of the attack. It's about how quick we can implement something to mitigate you know, the incident developing. So it's a different type of firefighting branch. So to be able to direct water effectively further is you know, which is great for when we're talking about if the cladding's on fire and we need to direct further up the building, but likewise from a speed of attack in the building as well. So there's a different type of branch called a smooth bore branch. It's specifically hose lines, so 3 hose lines that can be connected to the dry risers within the building. A dividing breaching, which is basically, if you imagine a tap that's got 2 other taps coming off it, where you can apply, so you can have twin lines effectively, because we ultimately need a firefighting team and we need a safety team. So we've got those things in there as well. So that's basically what's within that pack, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So as I said, with regard to command and training, everybody's done the e-learning, so for the knowledge and understanding of what they need to do for a high rise. We've conducted all the training that I've mentioned to you across those key areas, and specific tabletop exercises. Crews have gone out also and done talk-throughs within their buildings. James alluded to it's difficult in some of them to actually go around and squirt water, but they are aware of the processes then that they need to do. But then what we've been able to do as well in certain areas is to conduct specific high-rise exercises, which have been done, as I say, through West Yorkshire. There has been some done in North Yorkshire, and we have got more scheduled for early 2026. We've completed now, all staff have had high-rise equipment on smoke hoods and smoke curtains, which again was brought about from the Grenfell, so for assisting evacuating personnel using smoke hoods to help them so they're not breathing in the contaminants, and all smoke curtain to stop any with doors being open, stop any flow into what the protected stairwell where people will be evacuating from. And then the last bit on this slide is around those flexi duty officers who are all now trained through our incident command. We've just had an annual update within the last few weeks as well. So it's the second one we've had now as flexi duty officers around the responsibilities of what an evacuation officer would have to do at this type of incident.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's perfect. We can move on to the next one.
Thank you. So just the impact on that, just to finish off for me from a training point of view. So the impact that's had on us as through all what we've gone through there, you can see that's a clearer communication, both on the fire ground, with our control, with our firefighters during complex incident. It's faster for us to access buildings. We've got better understanding of what's going on from a situational awareness point of view. Stronger command and decision making. Again, both on the fire ground from our incident commanders, but with regards to the evacuation officer and being able to make decisions around the evacuation policies, better preparation for rapid fire spread, and then further enhancement of firefighter safety and situational awareness through the majority of the things that we spoke about, Deputy Mayor.
Brilliant, thank you. Just a couple of quick things on that one. Just how is the training kind of implemented? Have we had any incidents where actually the learning has effectively been put into practice yet? Maybe not. And then my other question was just how often, given that we've now done this training, how often people will then be expected to refresh it?
Sure. So we haven't had any incidents as of yet where we've done this for real from high-rise residentials. As I say, the training is now ongoing. So we still have some things to implement for early 2026, actually, to do some live exercises for that. With regards to continuation training through our maintenance and competency training program, that's built into that. So there will be every 6-month period, they will do some work on high-rise residential buildings and the type of training or the type of procedures that they'll need to do if they were to evacuate. Likewise, if they were going into, as we say, to commit a team, how do they do that? So that's all built into the maintenance and competency program.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I think that completes my section for training.
Brilliant,
So
thank you so much for that.
To James,
That's been really helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Andy. So yeah, just to go into the next part of our presentation is about the local remediation action plan. I think it's important that we start off with where this originates from. So we talked earlier on about the building at Grenfell didn't behave in the way we expected it to, and that some of that was primarily down to cladding on the outside of the building and external fire spread. So the government has created an action plan in the first instance, but felt that the pace of that work wasn't going at the speed that they wanted, and therefore created an acceleration plan for how the remediation on these buildings would be done more swiftly. So if we look at what buildings this applies to, is high-rise buildings, so those that are 18 metres or over, What I can say is the buildings that we do have are only just over 18 metres. We don't have any that are considerably beyond that, if you like, but they do tip over the 18 metres. And then we've got others that are classed as medium rise, which are between 11 metres and 18 metres. And the requirement for high rise is to be remediated by 2029. And the requirement for those medium rise buildings is to either be remediated, have a schedule booked for remediation, or face enforcement, which we'll go through a bit more detail in a moment, and all that by 2029. As a consequence of that, moving that locally, in September of last year, government asked the combined authority mayors to work with regulators, including the Fire and Rescue Service, and we've been part of that, to prepare a local remediation acceleration plan for these types of buildings. And we've already said why that is. It's to accelerate remediation activity and to identify support required from government. So we'll go a little bit more into detail in the next slide.
Can I just ask on that, where are we at in terms of the completion of the remediations that are due by 2029? Where have we got to for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service?
So I'll cover that in a couple of slides time,
sorry.
Deputy Mayor, if I could
Carry
cover
on.
it then, if you're happy with that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So moving on then to specifically for the fire and rescue's role in there. There are a number of regulators that are involved in this. The one that has the primary legislation and therefore called the primary regulator is the local housing authority. So they act under the Housing Act and they have the powers to basically, if people aren't replacing that unsafe cladding, if it is identified, then they have powers to remediate that. To take action against them and enforce under their powers. Now, a new supporting guidance was introduced under the Fire Safety Order as part of Grenfell, which were called the Fire Safety England regulations, and that gave the fire service some supporting powers in that space. So if we do need to prosecute, then we can support our partners in that space and have some legislation to fall back on. So again, we're not the primary legislator, but we have a keen role to play in there, and we will and have been supporting to identify cladding and any of the defects. And as part of that process, we'll of course, any buildings that we visit, we're not just looking at the cladding. We're not one to give reassurance to people in these buildings that their buildings are safe, not just from cladding, but in general. And we have the fire safety order that we can apply to communal areas. But again, if that's behind the flat door, we need to involve other partners. So collaboration is really important on this in particular. And then finally, we move that into our operational space, which Andy's just been talking about, that all the information that we gather through this process is fed in to prepare our operational crews to be familiar and have a predetermined plan when they arrive, and as well as ensuring that the weight of attendance is appropriate for that type of building. So just moving back then to the local remediation plan. So as you'll be aware, Deputy Mayor, this is on your website, so just a place for where the members of the public can find it. And I say we have been a key partner in that, and just put in scope to our building stock in North Yorkshire. What does this actually mean for us? So we've identified 22 buildings that are in scope, and none of those currently require remediation from unsafe cladding or any other critical safety issues. So again, I hope that gives assurance and reassurance. But again, I just wanted to probably pick up on a point that I didn't mention earlier on, that just because a building has cladding doesn't mean that it's not safe. That there are lots of buildings out there with cladding on that are safe, and also how this is potentially occurred is as they go through building standards, buildings are built, they go through building standards and building regulations, and therefore that makes sure that there's non-combustible materials on the outside where fire can spread. However, in this case, there is some of the older building stock, like in Grenfell, where remediation sort of is required, because when people have done refurbishments of those buildings, it hasn't been as a robust process, and therefore some of that cladding that has been found itself on some buildings has been non-fire retardant, and which is what caused that issue. So it's just to really put a bit of context around it. We have investigated all of our buildings in North Yorkshire. Any buildings that do have cladding are safe, and a certification and accreditation to prove that, and we've either done physical visits on all of those buildings, as well as our operational crews.
That's really reassuring, actually. Thank you for that. Can you just talk me through particularly the medium rise, the number investigated and closed 68? Just talk me through. So there were 72 buildings in scope.
Yeah.
And you just talk me through what's happened for those buildings, because that is quite a large number.
Yeah, so naturally, because of it's a lower height, that they were going to have more fall into this category. So those 72 have been identified through validated data sources that we share between partners to identify these buildings. And we've got now a single point of truth, which is Homes England, which has now been rebadged as the remediation dashboard. So that is a single point of truth that all regulators go to and update, and everybody can see one another's work. And we come together, and quite a lot of what's happened there is we've either physically gone out and looked to assure ourselves. We've done that in combination with working with the building owners, providing certification and accreditation from those who are producing the building materials that have gone onto those buildings, and just work together to build up a really rich picture and provide assurance around each of those buildings. So we've investigated and closed 68 of those 72 right now, and the few that are remaining, we continue to work with. We've got again some assurances, but we want to make sure we've got absolute assurance around that, to ensure that people are kept safe. And as an interim measure, we've increased our predetermined attendance at these types of buildings, as well as looking at, we touched on things like evacuation strategies and these types of things. So as a precautionary measure, we've worked with those places, just to say, while we investigate this, we're not taking any chances. We want to make sure that everybody's safe. We talk about windows of opportunity, so basically buildings, people to get out of the buildings. So what some of the techniques that we would use or advise and recommend is, to maybe increase that early warning, for allow people to get out in that window of opportunity, because every fire starts as a small fire, and before it develops and passes on. So therefore, if we build these protection measures into these buildings or within the arrangements, that means people have got longer to get out and be safe.
Brilliant. And just one other question, just because I completely understand why the metric is decided in the way that it is, because these things do vary slightly, but approximately how many stories is 11 to 18 metres?
So 18 metres is about 7 stories. So
okay,
so
it's 7 stories and above is the high rise definition.
Yes.
And most of our buildings lie in that. What's 11 metres? Is that about 4? What is that?
Yeah, so you're looking at, it's between 2.5, 3 metres per floor. So yeah, it can vary roughly, but around that, yeah. So that brings
4
in
to 7 story buildings are the ones that are falling into that category.
Absolutely, and you can obviously imagine that brings in far more building stock in that area for that reason.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, and actually just really reassuring, I think, for people to know that actually our buildings have been assessed and that you are assured in that space, which means that they should be assured in that space. Great. Thank you.
Just then to also mention that there was as part of your Office Deputy Mayor, obviously you applied for some centralised funding, and that funding went towards a dedicated fire safety officer for the fire and rescue service, which has helped provide that progress. If I'm honest, you know, that person is a dedicated post and hasn't been effective for Langdale for that reason. They are a uniformed officer, and we've been able to take them out of their normal role, if you like. And it's a bit of a success story in that sense, that we had this person being developed as for business continuity, and that was the person who was successful in securing this post and hit the ground running. And so it's really helped support, I say, that our partners in this space to help see that progress.
Fantastic. That's really good to know.
Finally, just a bit about reporting and monitoring. Again, as the chief mentioned, again, that this is at that national mayoral-led roundtables, top level, and given the importance that it's deserved. And then locally, there's that local officer-led steering groups. Again, collaboration is absolutely key in this area, and that has proved really effective.
Great.
So what's working well, and what are the main challenges? So I touched a number of times about the working arrangements and how it's been important to work together. So that is working really well. People are in that partnership really clear about what they should and shouldn't be doing, and who should be doing what. We're using those diverse tools that I mentioned earlier on to identify where remediation is required, and close areas, and give members of the public and yourself, Deputy Mayor, that assurance that we haven't got problems in these buildings. We've got clear measurable progress, which is on that shared dashboard that I talked about earlier on. Again, giving everybody the same picture and a single point of truth, and that can be viewed nationally as well as locally. The skilled resourcing, I mentioned that individual earlier on that has been put into this space, hit the ground running, was already trained, and has meant that good progress has been made. And then finally, again, just to touch on how that is really helping feed that operational intelligence and preparing our operational crews if they did have a fire at this type of premises.
And can I just ask, if the criteria suddenly changed, the identification system was changed, how would we then need to reassess buildings at that point if something else changed in the mix?
Well, I think this is probably feeding into what some of the challenges have been early on. In this was about data, and so if you change that criteria, where does that data come from, and what is your what's your point of validation? And we had a number of sources to start with. Nationally, there was a response to that because we fed that back, because naturally we don't want to be going out. You can imagine the resource required just to physically go and walk streets. That just isn't an effective way of doing things.
Yeah.
And that actually there is a much better way. And nationally, they pointed us to this remediation dashboard, which I said was previously owned by Homes England, who already had much of the data required. But there is a second source of validated data that we use just to be absolutely sure and robust, that we check and get sent on a quarterly basis, that there's nothing on there that isn't on that central database, and we will upload onto there if there are any anomalies, just to be as robust as possible around that and ensure that nothing is missed.
Brilliant. I didn't have any more questions on that. That's been really comprehensive in terms of explaining where the service has got to, which I think is really good to see and really reassuring, and also comprehensive in terms of the service's response to what was a completely awful and tragic incident that we talked about at the beginning, but actually that the learning is actively taking place within the service to make sure that this kind of thing could not, and if it did happen here, that the service was ready to deal with it. Does anyone else have anything else on that presentation? Thank you to James and to Andy for the that presentation, which was really comprehensive, and I think, yeah, as I said, really reassuring. So thank you so much for your slides and your input and answering my questions, which are, or sorry, always I always have quite a few. So sorry about that. I think we can move on to the spotlight section, which is, I've got a couple of things that I wanted to highlight in this section and to talk about. The first was the precept consultation, which has gone live this week, which is the amount of money on people's council tax bills that will be used for the police service and the fire and rescue service next year. That the consultation for that is live now, closes on the 5th of January. The Mayor and I are keen to establish some core principles to the decision that we know we've got to make around precept, and those are firstly giving council taxpayers the lowest possible impact on their council tax bills, secondly delivering value for money but effective public services, and thirdly trying to ensure that we're able to deliver on our priorities for the fire and rescue service and the police and crime and the police service, including around road safety, because that has been something that is a priority for us. It's in both our police and fire and rescue plans, but actually isn't something that we have currently got a clear resource for. So that precept consultation is live. Just to make sure I was taking the opportunity of this meeting to highlight the fact that it was live. I don't know whether, I don't think it's probably appropriate for anyone to say anything else about it other than the fact that I've made people aware that it's there. And then the second thing that I will bring the Chief Fire Officer in on, or Damien Henderson if he wants to come in as well, is that I think the Mayor has now approved the Community Risk Management Plan. I just wondered if someone could just set out briefly the core purpose of that plan and where people can access it if they want to see it.
Certainly, Deputy Mayor. So the core purpose of the Community Risk Management Plan is effectively the services business plan for the next 4 years. So we've been explicitly transparent with the public. This helps us then, it consolidates the fire and rescue plan, which is set by yourself and the Mayor, which is the ultimate strategic direction for the service and the public's priorities. It brings together our internal priorities and how we're going to achieve your plan, alongside also the HMI, the inspectorate's areas for improvement and the direction we need to take. All of those are consolidated into the Community Risk Management Plan. That will be available after your decision notice. They'll be published together. That will be available both on your website, on our websites, and in hard copies on fire stations as well. We will continue, therefore, to be held to account through your public meetings and also internally through your strategic board on our progress over the next 4 years against those strategic priorities.
Apologies, could you just clarify the timeline for that?
For the publication?
Yes.
Yes. We've been informed the decision notice is to be released imminently, and the Community Risk Management Plan will be released at the same time as your decision notice, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, great. I think it's actually the Mayor's decision notice officially.
Yes.
Yes, that's fine. So that will be imminently available for people who want to see what those final what the final Community Risk Management Plan looks like. I didn't have anything else I wanted to raise. So we can move on to the final section, which is the third party reports, which I think, Damien, is you. We can probably do this relatively fast because I don't have large numbers of questions unless you've got large amounts of things to tell me.
Sorry, it's muted itself. Hold on.
Sorry, can you hear me now, Deputy
I
Mayor?
can, yeah.
Yeah, apologies. I asked that before and got nothing. So
I couldn't hear you.
Be wrong. Certainly, we can move through this at pace. So, with regards to our misconduct handling report, which is the only report thematic that is left open, just to let you know that we had our HMI specific meeting 2 days ago. So we've got a number of recommendations that still need to be addressed, but looking at those reds that show from February and May, recommendation 10 has now been proposed to close, so that will change to blue. I chair the HMI specific meeting. I have asked for an in-depth update on all of the other recommendations by the next meeting. Some of those recommendations do have a financial impact, but I do want to understand what the barriers are for us to complete those. So hopefully by the next online public meeting, we will see a shift of those reds into blue, that they have been completed, but certainly we are moving through them. Senior responsible owners are being held to account with regards to completing those recommendations where possible, but with that consideration that some of them may need sort of financial support for us to implement.
Great.
With regards to the strategic timeline, don't want to go too much into this one, but this is obviously our new strategic timeline to prepare the organisation for our next inspection, which is likely to be summer, autumn of 2027. Obviously, this time we've got far less areas for improvement. But obviously all of those areas of improvement have been identified as a senior responsible owner, and we're looking to have made progress against all of them by early into next financial year. But that just shows the governance that we've put in place. Obviously, sorry, not obviously, but what is of interest to know, we're currently being audited on our HMI process by our independent auditors. So at the next online public meeting, hopefully I'll be able to give an early indication of what they've reported in relation to the processes and systems we've got in place to work through all of our HMI recommendations.
Great.
Yeah, nothing much on here. This is just identifying those areas for improvement, which I know that you're aware of, and asked questions on the previous meeting about a couple of them in relation to high-rise buildings. All of the senior responsible owners are being supported by the inspection officer and head of assurance to make sure that they've got clear actions set out to ensure that we close them off prior to the next inspection in 2027.
Can I just ask, sorry, Damien, can you just go back a slide? Just on those, do they all relate back to one of the ones with a timeline on it before?
Yes. Yes. So
and do I get separate updates on those to my strategic oversight boards?
yes, you will. So we will give you updates. So the governance route for this, through the HMI specific board, similar to what we've done with every recommendation, when any of these are proposed to close, it goes from the HMI specific meeting into risk and assurance board. When any of them get to a closure stage, we will update you at strategic oversight board, and the graph you saw on the first slide, which was about misconduct handling, we will share a new graph on that when we're progressing these on the online public meeting as well, so the public will see how we're responding to and resolving these 7 areas for improvement.
Great. The only one that really jumped out at me, if I'm honest, was the one around that it struck me just because I was thinking about it when the Langdale incident was going on, the AF 06445 around dual contracts and excessive hours. Just it was just something I was aware of from having spoken to some firefighters during and since the Langdale incident. I just wondered whether that was something that gets prioritised or whether these are all kind of in a hierarchy that's almost determined by the inspectors.
No, there will be prioritised amongst the senior responsible owners. Each of these areas for improvement have been included within our CRMP as an area of focus to ensure that, you know, we're looking holistically with the CRMP across all of our improvement work but they will be prioritised. Some of these will take longer than others because they will require technological solutions to ensure that we're providing the assurance we feel as a fire and rescue service that we need. But just to give you some assurance on the monitoring dual contracts and excessive hours, that work has already started to be prioritised with the CRMP and looking at a new HR system that can support us in managing that far more proactively.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
And then this last slide, a little bit about the digital analysis pack, which we use to benchmark our across the sector with other services, but probably the largest piece on here to identify is that the HMI State of Fire report, which is the Chief Inspector's report across the whole of the sector, was published on the 5th of November. Really, really pleasing that North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service got a name check within that report for a very positive, with a handful of other services that we'd closed down as many of our areas for improvement as we had, which was all 24, and that is set amongst over almost half of all areas for improvement from the last round of inspections was maintained across the sector. So the fact that we closed all of ours is something that we should be incredibly proud of. Absolutely. And has been name checked within the State of Fire report.
I did notice that, mainly because I was searching for anything to do with North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service loyally. Brilliant, thank you all. I'm not aware of, I think we did have a public question that has already been resolved. I think it was a health and safety related question, but it's been picked up specifically with, it was more a particular issue rather than a general issue that the wider public would be concerned about. So thank you again to James and Andy for their presentation. Thank you again to Damien for the performance pack and to Tom for inputting on the prevention work that the Fire and Rescue Service is doing. And just to say that the next online meeting will be on the 22nd of January with North Yorkshire Police Service, and the Fire and Rescue Service's next meeting is on the 19th of February. Thank you to everyone for their contributions and presentations, and to anyone who's watching, if you've got other questions you want to raise between those dates, you can get in touch with me on the office at any point online, or you can book private surgery appointments to discuss individual issues. All those issues can be picked up by the office separately as well. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone, and I'm going to close the meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.